Our top story today, tens of millions of voters in the United States are expected to tune in for the first of three presidential debates between Republican President Donald Trump and Democratic candidate Joe Biden. I'm joined now by Time magazine contributor Jay Newton-Small via Skype from the US, and here in the studio, ABC International Affairs analyst Stan Grant. Welcome to you both. Stan, I'll start with you first because you're going to be hosting our coverage in 45 minutes' time. The hype is all in place. The stage is set. What are you anticipating?
Well, you know, it's up until now, it's been so difficult to get a read on this. Yes, we've got the polling, and the polling shows that Joe Biden is way ahead. Yes, we have this devastation of coronavirus, both on the health of Americans but also on the economy. But we haven't seen the big rallies. You know, we haven't seen, the energy that you normally see around an election campaign. Now they come face to face in a debate. We know what to expect from Donald Trump. We've seen it before. He's proven himself to be a strong debater. Well, we saw that during the primaries when he won the nomination the first time around in 2016. How effective he can be at lowballing the debate, at taunting people, at bringing people onto his turf, at performing. The questions about Joe Biden is how will he perform? Will we get, as Donald Trump says, the sleepy Joe, or will we get the person who is effective, who has been in the Senate, who has been a vice president, who is across the detail, who can talk about the healing and the unifying of the country that he's mentioned? It's a fascinating time. Two people coming together in a country that is polarised, that in so many ways is broken, and the stakes here so high for this election.
Jay, evening to you. They're your time. The stakes are high. With Joe Biden ahead in most polls, is it his to lose through the debates?
Well, I think they come pretty evenly matched in terms of, I think, expectations, although there is Donald Trump is coming into this saying he's going to attack Joe Biden. Joe Biden's coming into this saying he's going to take the high ground. He's going to not take the bait and really just try to focus on the economy, focus on the coronavirus and the effect of that and Donald Trump's mismanagement of this. And I think in that sense, Donald Trump might have really shot himself in the foot in downplaying so many expectations for Joe Biden, because he and the White House and the campaign have spent weeks sort of saying that they didn't expect much out of Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, in this debate. They thought he was going to be a poor debater. They didn't think he was going to be up to the task. And they've set expectations so low that it's not going to be too hard for Joe Biden. I think if he just shows up and is pretty coherent, that he might just win the debate that way. It'll be interesting to see if Donald Trump actually manages to pique a response out of Joe Biden. He is famously known for losing his temper, especially when his family is attacked. And the White House has said the president does plan to bring up his son, Hunter Biden, and the Burisma affair in Ukraine. He was on this Ukrainian board of this oil company, and there's been sort of allegations that he shouldn't have done this, that it was inappropriate, that he got money, and what did he do for that money? He somehow corrupted his father in this, who was managing relations with Ukraine at the time. But a lot of investigations have looked into this and not found any wrongdoing. So we'll see if Joe Biden actually takes the bait and loses his temper. And if he does, what happens then? But if he manages to just play it cool and stick to the facts and stick to essentially his message, which is that Donald Trump is not competent to lead this country, and after 4 years, it's really been disastrous, and another 4 would be equally, if not worse, that is a win for Joe Biden. So it's really all about getting Joe Biden off message and him doing better than expectations, the low expectations that Donald Trump has set.
Jay, it's Stan here. Can I get your thoughts about how coronavirus is going to play into this election, not just as a backdrop to the sort of, the difficulties the country is going through in the handling of coronavirus by Donald Trump, but also in the integrity of the election itself? We're seeing record numbers of postal ballots being requested, and how they are going to play out, and questions already being raised from Donald Trump about whether he will accept the result itself.
Certainly, Donald Trump made news in the last week in the United States when he questioned whether or not he would accept the results of, the election, saying that he didn't believe necessarily that these ballots should be counted. And there's been absolutely no evidence of ballot tampering at a massive scale in any U.S. election ever held. And so it would be highly unusual and almost unheard of if that were to actually happen in the United States. There has been, though, a lot of issues with the U.S. Postal Office. The man that Donald Trump actually appointed to lead the U.S. Postal Service has been imposing reforms that have been very controversial. Something like 47 out of the 50 states have warned that they aren't sure that they can deliver the ballots in time for Election Day once all of the ballots are mailed in. And so there's been a lot of back and forth between Congress about funding. Do they need to give this service much more money in order to get the election done? Whether or not these new sort of regulations in the U.S. Postal Service should take effect. And so there's a lot of questions about whether or not the vote can happen in the way that we expect it to. And I think almost everybody certainly expects that we're not going to know on election night who won this election. It's going to be one of those races where if there's so many mail-in ballots and so many people are, it's going to take forever to count those. And it takes a few days. You could just have to mail your ballot by Election Day. It might take a few days to deliver those ballots. And then at that point, it's going to be potentially a week out until we know what's happened. And so there's a lot of ways in which, and there's a lot of fear that Donald Trump will say that whatever happens with the election, that somehow it's been stolen, that these votes have been tampered, that they're not legal. And then there's going to be all kinds of recounts and legal questioning. And we all sort of had bad memories of the 2000 Florida recount where the entire country spent weeks, if not months, looking at these hanging chads and trying to decipher what the voters' intentions were when they filed these votes. So, it's just something that's a bit of a nightmare scenario in the United States right now. And there's been a lot of questions about what happens if Donald Trump decides not to cede power, and would the Secret Service then be responsible for removing him from office? And so, these are all speculative. Of course, we've never had anything like this happen in the United States, and it would be truly unprecedented.
Live pictures actually, Stan, of a motorcade arriving as one of the candidates. I didn't see whether it was Donald Trump or Joe Biden arriving for the debate. They will be nervous at this stage. They are both seasoned debaters, public speakers, but this is a huge stage.
Yeah, it is, and everything on the line. I mean, Donald Trump, we know, is a performer. He'll bring the reality TV show host. But Joe Biden as well, years in the Senate. He's a debater. He has a long history of service to the country in government. He's been Vice President. He performed well in the vice presidential debates, particularly against Paul Ryan when he was Obama's running mate. He didn't perform well in the primaries for the nomination, but he did as the numbers started coming down. He improved when there were fewer people on the stage. I think it's interesting to look at this 2016 and draw parallels. You look at the polls, certainly Joe Biden is ahead, but so was Hillary Clinton at the time. Hillary Clinton finished the election with 3 million more votes, but it was the peculiarities of the electoral college system that got Trump into the White House. And you need to look at what those critical states are, and Jay touched on a little bit of the polling there before, but if you're looking at places like Florida, like Georgia, like North Carolina, places that went Republican last time around, like Michigan or Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, that the Democrats are hoping to get. If you look at the numbers and shuffle those numbers around, you might get an indication of how difficult it would be for Donald Trump starting so far behind. But I'm mindful as well that the polls were wrong before, and the polling tells us what we know, but they don't tell us what we don't know. That's the very nature of polling. Who will energise the base? Who will get the vote out? That's going to be critical as well. Strong anti-Trump feeling amongst Democrats. Will Trump energise his base? How big is that base? All of those questions still remaining to be answered.
And Jay, Stan touched on it as well, the coronavirus issue. Over 200,000 Americans have lost their lives in it. It has affected every part of the country, and all the while Donald Trump has told people it's going to be under control very soon. We're doing very well. We're leading the world in this. Joe Biden will pick on that narrative, surely.
Absolutely. There's been a couple of bombshell revelations in the last couple of weeks leading up to this debate. And one of them is a book by Washington Post longtime correspondent Bob Woodward, in which he has interviews and, in fact, tapes of these interviews with Donald Trump saying as early as January that he knew this was going to be a very serious problem for the United States, that he knew that this was going to be a problem, but that he was downplaying it publicly because he didn't want he didn't want to panic people. He didn't want it to be a political liability. He thought it might go away. And there was even speculation amongst his sort of senior advisors that this wouldn't really affect rural areas where their base is, and so would really only affect urban areas where Democrats were, which is really crass, if true, a very crass sort of thing. Calculation to make, that Democratic lives are not worth the same as Republican lives. So he's going to have to answer, I'm sure, some questions around these reports of his early mishandling, intentional mishandling of this disease to political ends. The other big scandal that's happened in the last week has been the revelation by the New York Times of more than 10 years of Donald Trump's taxes, and reports that he paid less in taxes than a school teacher in the United States on average in the last 10 years, and zero taxes many years. Last year he paid the last year reported was only $750, which is almost nothing, and that he's actually hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. And that this could be a potential liability if true, that foreign leaders or people who knew about that debt, people who hold that debt, could unduly influence the president and essentially blackmail him into doing whatever it is they want done at their bidding, if that's true. And so I think there will be questions certainly raised, if not by the moderator, Chris Wallace of Fox News, then certainly by Joe Biden about these most recent allegations. And in order to really underline that, Joe Biden earlier today, released his taxes and has said publicly that for 22 years now, he's publicly released his taxes. Why isn't Donald Trump doing the same?
OK. I know as you watch the debate, as Stan watched the debate, you'll come to your own opinion of how it's going for either side. But Jay, I wonder, in such a polarised campaign, where does the moderate American get the analysis from to really find out the truth behind who has done well and who has not?
Well, these days it's so hard to, you kind of have to triangulate your truth if you really want to see all sides and watch, some Fox News, some MSNBC. And I mean, really everybody's kind of got a bent, and it's so hard. I think the nature of news in the United States has changed enormously in the last 20, 30 years since the advent of the internet. And so it'll be interesting to see. I don't know that there are any undecided voters left in America today. I mean, there are people who really don't know how they feel about Donald Trump? It's hard to imagine after 4 years that you don't have an opinion about Donald Trump. But there are people, I think, who still can be swayed, particularly the suburban women is the most famous example, non-college educated suburban women. They voted in 2016 mostly for Donald Trump. Actually, non-college educated white women voted for him by an historic margin of more than 27 percentage points. But that same demographic in the 2018 election only voted for Republicans by a margin of 6 percentage points. And so that's a group that's really swung in recent elections. And so in current polling, they're trending more towards Joe Biden. The question is, can the president really bring them back? And a lot of his convention held last month, a few weeks ago, actually, really was aimed at those women, trying to sort of bring them back and say that Donald Trump is the president to lead them, that he's going to keep them safe. And they often are called security moms because they're very concerned about their sons going off to war, about attacks against the United States, and they're looking for a strong leader. So we'll see tonight if Donald Trump can continue that message, appealing to those security moms that he is a better steward to lead the country against threats against the United States. And that, I think, certainly will be one of the messages we'll see.
Jay's right about the media as well. Part of the polarisation and the fracturing of America has been represented in the media. Fox News, of course, which has been very pro-Trump. Chris Wallace, though, has been very tough with the president and asked some very hard questions of the president. But then you get media on the other side, and Donald Trump, of course, dismissing the likes of CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times. It's going to be interesting as well to see how this backdrop of anger that we've seen this year as well plays into the election. We've seen particularly the Black Lives Matter protests. Donald Trump has tried to pivot to that as a law and order issue and tried to wedge Joe Biden on that, saying that he's not speaking up against law and order, that these protests are rioters and looters. What will the black vote do? Will they be energised? We know that Kamala Harris is on the ticket. Will that get them out? That's going to be critical as well. They voted overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton in 2016, but not in big numbers. Getting the black vote mobilised, getting the black vote out is also going to be critical, particularly in some of the areas that Jay has mentioned.